going on the live stream. We're preparing, getting ready. And
Nice.
then
I've never seen this.
what?
I've never seen this before. It says live on YouTube on my end.
Oh yeah, look at that. Going on the live stream. We're preparing, getting ready. We're live. We are live on YouTube. What?
I've never seen this before. It says live on YouTube on my end. Can you hear the kickback on your end or no?
Oh yeah, look at that. Okay, so we are live on YouTube. So that is to confirm. Yeah, I have to close it. So we're gonna be live on like multiple platforms. So you know that we're live on Zoom and on YouTube.
Cool.
And this is the Feed Your Soul mixtape. I'm here with Justin. So if you want to introduce yourself to everybody out there, what do you stand for? What are some of the teachings that you've had from 2020 and anything else you'd like to share today?
Yeah, for sure. I just want to first start off by thanking you, Julia, beautiful, beautiful sister, for inviting me on to this podcast, this YouTube, and all the beautiful conscious creation that you're creating through this podcast and this stream of wisdom and beauty and creation that you're creating for the world. And just such an honor to be here to talk consciously, to dance with words, to dance with vibration, to dance with frequency. It's been such an honor to know you, to get to know you, to continue to evolve together. And just thank you so much for thinking of me and allowing me to be a part of this beautiful creation of yours. So thank you first and foremost for that. My name is Justin Tristao. I'm super excited to be here. This is my first podcast / live recording. In regards to what I do, it's still really an ongoing search or seek for me in regards to what I'm presenting forth into the world. I used to be a real estate agent / entrepreneur for a long time. And I know a lot of people don't really know that about me. Now I've turned into more of a wellness practitioner. And I really don't know what to call myself at this point because it's such a growing, evolving concept and newer ideas that continue to blossom through me. I facilitate breathwork and breathwork facilitation for specific individuals and groups and businesses and things of that sort. I hold a lot of ceremonies, sound baths. I stand for healing. I stand for self-love. I stand for beauty, love, truth, expanding our hearts, living from this place, breathing from this place, speaking from our hearts. And hopefully that gives you just a brief breakdown of who I am. And
That was beautiful. Oh my God. And I, as we're preparing for the broadcast, I was one of the most inspirational people that I've met through this year. And I'm so grateful for that. So I'm really glad that you are, diving into this world of wellness. And this is Wellness Wednesday. For anyone joining us out there. That's why we're doing it on Wednesday. So it's Wellness Wednesday, and it's all about bringing this space of wellness, especially right now. I feel like with the lockdown and everybody staying home, wellness has been such a huge, focus for everyone. Just realizing that your wellness and your well-being it has to be your number one priority. And that's why I created the Feed Your Soul mixtape. The podcast is going to be on Spotify. It's going to be available after this recording. And then it's also going to be available on Facebook. You can always look for Julia Milling on Facebook, and juliamilling.com/podcast is the link for the podcast, and Feed Your Soul mixtape on Spotify as well. So all social medias out there, and Instagram, I'm Julia Milling Rio. And if you want to share your handle as well, we can have that after the episode, so anyone can check out the parts of the episode as well. But before we start the conversation, because you're in this space of wellness, what I really want to ask you is if you can just give us a minute of wellness, because I know you're so great at creating this conversation, this honest conversation coming from a space of vulnerability. And that's one of the reasons I really wanted to have you here today, because especially as a man, we're always talking about the masculine as such force that cannot be show, cannot show vulnerability and cannot stand for that sacred feminine, or sometimes doesn't stand for, or doesn't have the space to stand for the sacred feminine. And I learned so much from you just about honoring the sacred feminine as a man and showing that vulnerable side and that nurturing side as a man, like as a masculine. So I really want you to dive into that a little bit, and just if you want to lead just like a minute of wellness so it can arrive, everyone can take a breath and just like really be present in this space right now.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that was kind of like a multifaceted kind of question and request. So what I would love to do is just for those listening, if I heard correctly, maybe just what I love to do in regards to breath work and leading breath and wellness is the reason why I'm a breathwork facilitator, and the reason why I believe God has gifted me with being able to facilitate breath. Anytime that I facilitate my breath work, I always open with this specific story of mine, which kind of goes back to explaining a bit more about myself and why I'm here, and how my life has evolved to where it's at right now. Is around the age of like 17, I began to experience a lot of anxiety. I began to experience a deep sense of like purposelessness and depression, and a lot of those things that go along with that. For those who've experienced anxiety, for those who've experienced depression, um, it's a really deep subject for me to talk on, and I'm open about it on my social media. Not too many people are familiar with my story in this way, which is why I'm grateful to be able to be on a platform like this to express even more in depth about these things, because I believe that um, anxiety and depression is the new form of awakening, and that's what I've learned through my own struggles with anxiety and depression. And yeah, I mean, if you're familiar with anxiety and depression, the way that it affects your wellness is absolutely insane, and it's really beyond what most people can ever imagine if you've never experienced it for yourself. And the one thing that I believe that saved my life from those diseases, or from those things, whatever you'd like to call them, the anxiety and the depression, was my breath. And I believe that I credit breath work and cultivating breath and breathing deeply with saving my life. And that's how strong and that's how profound and that's how powerful I believe breath, and utilizing breath for calming yourself and creating a safe space, creating a space where you can be present and patient and at peace. Just by a few deep breaths can relax you in ways that you would never imagine. So what I would love to do, if you guys are open, and for those who are listening, is just give yourself this chance to close your eyes for a second, and take a deep breath in through your nose and release the breath through the mouth. Taking another deep inhale through the nose and releasing through the mouth. Deep inhale through the nose and releasing through the mouth. Taking one more deep breath in, holding that breath at the top. And exhaling and releasing, and relaxing. Opening your eyes whenever you're ready. And just being able to feel when you open your eyes the change in the frequency, or the change in your body, the change in your overall sense of wellness or peace that a few breaths can do for you. And these are things that I constantly remind myself of throughout my day. Um, when I'm flowing through my day, when I'm going through work, when I'm out there in the real world, these triggers are still very much so present in my life. I've done a lot of healing work through my own healing journey, but it's not as if I don't struggle out there. And the moment that I continue to feel myself get off kilter or off center, I'm so accustomed, and I've set so much discipline around my own being that I can become aware and conscious of when I'm off centered. And what I do is I consciously bring myself right back into my breath and breathe deeply into my belly, breathe deeper into my center. And after a few deep breaths, like we just did it right now, I'm back there. I'm back living from my heart. I'm back living from that centered space. And I believe that the world needs more people living from this centered, grounded space and moving from that place. And yeah, just the breath and what that can do for your own specific wellness is so important. So
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm receiving everything that, I'm listening, and I'm receiving the energy as well of what you're saying. And I can feel the difference just taking those three breaths and just listening to your voice, like, guiding us here. I really can feel the difference right now just being in a different space,
mm,
you know?
yeah.
So that's so special to be able to ground yourself, just taking those three breaths and being able to be more present. And I mean, just like doing that, no matter where you are. And it's so refreshing. Thank you for sharing as well about the struggles that you've had with anxiety and depression and how it has helped you. Because I feel like that's so refreshing to share, not only, as a human being, especially as a man. I mean, I've had those struggles as well. And I feel like anyone, that has been through 2020 has had some sort of emotional challenge, because we're all human beings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a year that you can't really, push it anymore, like taking care of your well-being, and everything has been brought to the surface. I feel like, especially emotions. I feel like we're all more emotional. I'll speak for myself. I feel more emotional, more sensitive to energy, to people, to the situations around me, you know, and even like a lot of things move me too. Sometimes, like, I'll see, I don't know, a bird or butterfly, and it'll make me cry because I feel like it's so beautiful, the meaning of life, and just more connected to life itself, and more connected to the soul that we really are. I feel like this conversation is so important because it's not just saying like feed your soul, just, oh, let's just be positive and let's just, be happy all the time. It's about really going deeper into your soul. And we've done a lot of that work also with our spiritual group, that I feel like he led me into this journey of really looking at what can I, what can I do in my life right now, or how can I be differently, or show up differently in my life right now. And just learning more about the journey of the soul, why we're here, having the female experience, the male experience, and just bringing those two together. I really want you to talk a little bit more about that, because I feel like this year has also been a lot of a very polarizing year. So I feel like there's been a lot of like polarities, and just pulling us through, all, I mean, being a woman, being a man, and so much of that, and race, gender, all of those things that pull us apart. But then being human, like our human beings experience, our experiences as human beings is, what we have in common. Our soul, we're all a soul here, evolving, learning, growing together, evolving together. So if you could speak to that as well, just how do you unite that concept and that male and female experience, so we can have more harmony and in life, and just evolve together.
Yeah, beautifully said, and thank you for sharing what you just shared. I think first and foremost, it's important to understand that these polarities, or the duality of masculine and feminine, the yin and the yang, the sun and the moon, right? And we'll bring it back to simplicity and just keep it in the masculine and the feminine for the sake of just like understanding, right? Masculine and feminine is most importantly supposed to looked at, it's important to be looked at as energies, right? Because if we continuously use, and I do this myself on my social media, and when I'm describing and working with people, we use the man and the woman, but we got to see masculine and feminine more as energies, right? And I have a masculine, feminine energy within myself. Just because I'm a man doesn't mean I only have masculine energy. I actually have both. I have masculine energy and feminine energy. And you being a woman here in this human body, you also have masculine and you have feminine energy. It's also important to understand and grasp the fact that most of the time, women have more dominant feminine energy than masculine, and vice versa for me. Usually for men, it's usually more dominant in the masculine and the feminine, but those roles could easily be switched. I work with a lot of women that are very much so tapped into the masculine more than the feminine nature. And I work with men that are much more tapped into the feminine nature than the masculine. So the roles can be switched. And I think that's important for most people to understand and to grasp that concept before you go any further in regards to working with the energies, how to transmute, how to balance those energies, how to combine them, how to marry them, how to become more unified in both, right? So I hope that makes sense for the people that are viewing. And I think that when that concept got introduced to me, being and understanding the depth of those being energies versus just man and woman and man, that really shifted my state of like consciousness in the way that I perceive those things, and it made it more palpable, and it was easier to be able to work with those energies now that I see them as energies versus just people. So that's extremely important. And I'm, Julie, you know me, I'm a big advocate of being a man and supporting the feminine. And I'm a big advocate of supporting men in their own process. A lot of the work that I'm stepping deeper into is working with men and allowing them to realize and honor themselves and their heart. Being a man growing up and being exposed to, I hate putting it this way, but toxic masculinity is the only word that comes across my tongue. And being exposed to my father and the men that were around me when I was growing up in these very precious ages from 5 to 21, I was taught not to open up. I was taught not to cry. I was taught that if you show your emotions, you're a bitch, or you're gay, or you're not a man, or these stereotypes, or these really, it's magic, because these words are magic, and they begin to become infused in your subconscious. They begin to become realities in which you live from. They become beliefs that are stuck into your subconscious mind that you live out in the external world. And those are things that I've had to work through as a man, as a masculine man, to cultivate that sense of femininity, that feminine energy that is more intuitive, that's more caring, that's more loving, that's more open-hearted. These are all feminine qualities that most men have strayed away from because of these beliefs that they've been taught by their fathers and the men that grew up around their circle. And it's so important because we have a lot of men that are walking around with unbalanced energies, as we just spoke of a few minutes ago. They're extremely strong on their masculine traits, and their feminine is completely ignored. And that's most of the men that we see today, which is why I have a lot of women followers, is because of the fact that there's a scarcity of men that are balanced and that honor themselves in such a way. And I've had to go through years of strenuous, and I mean this in a very humble way, I've had to go through years of strenuous heart opening processes and healing journeys, and going and diving deep within my entire soul, diving deep within my body, diving deep within these memories, diving deep within the relationships that I had that have caused me to believe and think these ways. So it's so important to be able to understand and to pinpoint what energy you're picking up on, and where you're lacking, and what's not serving your greatest good in being a balanced and whole individual.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for saying that, because especially as a man, it's so important to have that voice. And I feel like we don't have as many men being vocal about vulnerability and, merging your feminine with your masculine and balancing it out, and just creating that space for honoring the feminine. So it's so refreshing to have this conversation with you. And the other thing I would say is, I mean, I even catch myself, I would say, I do a lot of meditation and wellness, and and participate in so many of these conversations about mindfulness and compassion. And I even catch myself sometimes saying, oh, all men this, all men that, or all women this, or all women that. And I'm trying to catch myself more and more. And when I hear someone else say, I always make, a comment, don't generalize, because men are different, women are different. Anytime a generalization, that's an ignorant assumption. Anytime you say all women this, all men that, you're just taking away from the uniqueness of being a person, a unique human being, and you're just putting them in a bucket like they're not, their own selves. So I really feel like I'm trying to catch myself more on that, but especially on the masculine. I think there's so much, and we're all healing together. The more we talk about it, the more we're healing around it. That's why I wanted to talk about it. But I just wanted to put it out there that, that there is so much from past experiences, like you said, or past relationships or past trauma. There's so much of that still, negativity in the male experience as like an oppressor, or the a perpetrator of violence, or or trauma, how do you, and sometimes even, the man that is not, allowing space for that, for creating that vulnerability. So how would you say, how do you stay away from that or heal that, in order to create more space for more men to be vulnerable, and even start having this conversation for the men that are not, open to that, right now at this moment?
Yeah, can you rephrase the question kind of just in a more
Yeah,
simple?
sure. So the question, I know it was like a long-winded comment, but the question would be, what would be the best way to approach this, even as a woman? Or how do you start the conversation with a man that doesn't have that vulnerability channel open, in a way that you've seen, that how would be the most effective way to do that?
As a woman is what you're
As
asking.
a woman, yeah, to create that space for men to be more open, more vulnerable, in a way that would not create defensiveness or conflict. So how can we as women create that space for men to be more vulnerable? I think that's
Beautiful.
that's the question.
No, beautiful. And it's such an important topic. And it's a question that I continuously get asked on my end. And it's a constant evolution of learning and growing and evolving together in this what I like to call like the battle of the sexes, not in the sense of battle, but in the sense of there's a lot of karmic laundry is what I just called it in one of my last posts. It's like there's so much karmic laundry being aired through the sexes, through the masculine and the feminine energy. And it's quite interesting and this is kind of where it gets back into the man and the woman talk, which is where I think a lot of people begin to see it in that way as a man and a woman. Because let's just say, for example, in a relationship with a woman that's in a relationship with a man that's not in touch with his feelings, if you as a woman approach this man or your boyfriend, whatever the case may be, and you tell him, hey, honey, like, let's get you more into, why aren't you in tune with your emotions? Why can't you be vulnerable? Why can't you be open? Why can't you be honest like this guy? What that's going to do is that's going to cause him to invoke, almost without him even knowing, this wound of shame. And shame is such a harsh wound that men carry specifically. Obviously, women carry shame as well, and shame is just a natural vibration that a lot of people are operating at, and that never works. No man wants to be questioned in his manhood by another woman, and as harsh as that may sound, it's sort of just the reality in which a lot of men were raised in. When a woman approaches me and asks me, well, that never really happens, but it that's yeah, that and that's the difficulty in the vastness of that topic, right? It's like, how does that happen? And I believe if I can give any guidance, I'm not a big fan of advice, but if I can give any guidance in regards to that topic, would it be just to allow him to go through his own space, to trot in his own path, to be there, to hold him in a safe space, but without intruding, because the moment that you think that you can assist him in being more vulnerable is the moment that shame is going to come up, the guilt, the repressiveness, you know, the oppression. He's going to keep pushing you away because that's not him. He needs to learn how to cultivate those feminine qualities of love and compassion for his own heart, and he needs to learn how to self-soothe himself in that way. And it's only when he begins to self-soothe himself and heal himself of these past traumas or beliefs or patterns of thinking that he'll begin to soften his heart into your own feminine essence, you know. But and that's the interesting part of this dialogue, is like, when and where does that happen? And if you're in a relationship with someone, are you willing to wait? And at what point does it, I just made a lot of posts on my social media on Instagram about this. It's like, at what point are you going to stop suffocating yourself as a woman and waiting for this man when potentially he doesn't have the qualities, or it's not in his divine nature to be able to change himself? Maybe it's going to take you owning up to your own self, honoring your own heart, honoring your own body, honoring your own life, honoring your own self, and stepping forward and walking away from that relationship for then him to meet a divine masculine man. And that may break his heart at the moment, but what if that allows him to enter into such a painful space, such a dark space, that he has no other choice but to open and expand his heart, right? What if it's that's going to cause him to become more of a whole man, right? And that's where I find such hard words to answer your question, because of the fact that it's so multifaceted, and the dimensions and the opportunities and the different ways that can happen are endless, right? But it happens when we own up for ourselves, right? And one of the beautiful spaces of wisdom that I continue to move forward with is, we can only be responsible for our own healing, right? And our external reality is a reflection of our internal reality. So whatever we work on internally inside of ourselves, our external reality will begin to reflect that. So in this specific position and question that you just brought forth, what inside of yourself can you work on? Right? What inside of yourself can you work on to change that external reality? And it may be, like I just said, it may be the lack of honor that you have for yourself as a woman, to then not be in that relationship that is not according to your own divine will. What if it's you? What if it's you that's not supposed to be in that relationship, that's not honoring yourself? What if you're in a relationship for pleasure and you don't even know it? What if it's because you're seeking validation and acceptance because you were never held by your own father, and you're seeking love from another man, and you feel as if a man needs to fill the void, right? And these are the it's interesting, right, when you begin to dive deeper into these subjects.
Yeah, it's very deep. I know this is not something that, it gets solved in like one afternoon, but it's definitely a good conversation to start, just creating the space for the conversation, because I feel it's kind of like the elephant in the room. And right now, I know a lot of people are dealing with relationship struggles, or, are on lockdown with their significant others, and they're having those difficult conversations. And part of my goal is also to bring up these difficult conversations that in the end are actually beautiful, because they are deep, meaningful conversations that are needed. They're actually, I'm switching from difficult conversations to just important conversations to be had, And I love what you said too about the female, because that's part of what I've been working on myself as, the female energy, the sacred feminine, and honoring that sacred feminine energy. And it's so important. And I mean, it comes to that point that you think, okay, I'm just going to have to honor my sacred feminine. And sometimes it's not easy, because you are, bombarded from all sides, with the masculine, or that the masculine either dismissing you, or I mean, there's so many triggers out there. Just talking to my female friends is just, sometimes you see something that even the guy won't even realize that he's doing. He'll stop you from being able to express yourself, or explain what you're saying, like mansplaining, or just just disregard just what you just said, just not hear you. And I think that's one of the worst feelings, is not being heard. Just like expressing yourself and putting yourself out there and just not being heard at all, like completely dismissed. And I feel like I've had that experience, and pretty much every woman I've talked to has had that experience at one point, that you just feel completely disregarded for being a woman, that you feel, if you were a man, you would have been heard, or you would have a space in the conversation. But just because you're coming from a space of being a woman, you feel that you're not being fully heard to what you're saying. But I'm not trying to make this like as a victim, kind of position. I feel like that is what you said. That is like, then you have to work on yourself. I'm just being aware of like those triggers that are out there, because I've noticed that on myself, that it's a lot easier to be grounded and centered when I'm on my own, meditating in my room, with aromatherapy and like essential oils and taking a hot bath, than when you're out in the world having a conversation in a group setting with other men, or in a relationship. That's one thing I've noticed. Like, I'm not in a relationship right now, but when I have had, I've been in like long-term relationships, and it's like one thing that I noticed, like, it's so interesting how, like, it's almost like that collective unconscious of relationships gets triggered, and it's like you get triggered by that masculine energy to a person that is not who you are. So that's really like what I've been reflecting on. That is like why when I'm confronted by the masculine in a relationship setting, I get so triggered by things that are not even me. I don't even know where they come from. And part of it is that, collective unconscious and past experiences, and just, you just get unconsciously triggered by it. So okay, I'm going to throw another hard question on you. How do we move past relationships and old beliefs so that you can start fresh? Since I feel like today is like the theme could be like a fresh start to the year, or fresh start to your relationships. So how do you start fresh, and you give a clean slate to a new relationship?
Beautiful. Yeah, I want you to hold that question, okay? Because I want to scoot it back just a little bit, because it was so important what you just mentioned about 2 minutes ago about presence and not being heard. And I believe, and I didn't want to cut you off at that point, because I appreciate you sharing that so much, because that's such an important topic that I believe a lot of women are too afraid to actually come out and say, unless it's with a dialogue with other women, like you mentioned. That's kind of the girl talk when no men are around, right? And that's beautiful. And it's beautiful that you're able to express that to me, so that other women can feel even more comfortable about that. Not only that, but for the men that are going to tune into that, for them to begin to understand the depth of the hurt that we may be causing through the lack of presence, right? And I just want to say something for the men that are listening, and the women. The most beautiful virtue or quality that a man can cultivate in his body and in his entire being is presence, right? To be present as a man is to be very strong. To be present is something that everyone wants. To be heard is something that everyone needs, right? And you can only be heard, and you can only truly listen when you're present, right? And that means that mind needs to shut off. It doesn't mean it has to be quiet completely, because that takes a long time. But to be present is the ultimate virtue that a man can cultivate. When a man is present, it's a very magnetic energy, right? And when a woman is heard by a man, whether that be in a relationship or outside of a relationship, that opens the woman in ways for her gifts to begin to blossom. Because guess what, men? Guess what, women? Women are the ones who cultivate and allow this channel of intuitive wisdom, beauty, and truth to stream through them. So we should be listening to women. We should be listening to the feminine. We should be listening to the stream of wisdom, the stream of truth, right? And I believe that, and this is just going even more deeper and deeper into the past. And I think I've shared this with you, Julia, yourself, and I share this with a lot of different women that cross paths with me that are ready to receive it. And I hope that this serves someone. throughout time, right? Long time ago, the woman used to be upheld and regarded as the most precious diamond in the universe, and rightfully so, right? But at some point in time, there was this greedy man or this greedy energy. We can call it a man, or we can call it this masculine toxic energy, began to see that by taking advantage and by switching the roles in that way, and by dismissing and oppressing and suppressing and repressing the women and their intuitive abilities and their power and their strength and their intuitive abilities, by doing that, they would have no more strength or power anymore. And that was when the roles switched. That was when men began to become more powerful, and men were the ones that began to be looked up to. And that was when the world began to collapse, whether we've seen it or not, whether we knew it or not. When the feminine is disregarded, and when it's thrown into the mud and the dirt, and when it's below the masculine, the world will never be able to operate the right way as it should. And that's what we're witnessing right now. And this is really, really, really deep wisdom that has come from thousands and thousands of years ago. And it's barely beginning to be uncovered in a way. And I know I kind of went on a tangent, but to bring it back down to the present, it's like, for women to really be able to express themselves in the beauty and the wisdom and the truth and all the love and compassion and all the greatness that women hold, or the feminine, and that beautiful essence, for them to flourish, for them to be themselves, for them and their gifts to be able to be expressed into the world, they have to be seen, heard, protected, and honored. And as a man, I believe that is what we are lacking in so many ways. And it is only through realizing these truths that a man is going to be able to step forth into his kingdom, and so that the queens could step forward into their kingdom. Right?
Amen to that. I just want to say amen to that.
And when we're able to both, and when we're both able to be able to do that, and when the woman steps forward into her queendom, the man is able to step into his role, and the woman's able to step into her role, right? And that's when that marriage happens, right? That's when unison happens. That's when unity happens. And that's when the world begins to become a different place. And there's vastness behind the words that I just said, because there's a lot of work to do, there's a lot of work to do to be able to get to that place, which is why the conversations that we're having today are so important. It is the elephant in the room, and it needs to stop being the elephant in the room, because this is the most important work. I believe men's work and women's work is probably the most important work that needs to be done. And somehow, some way in the near future, they're going to have to begin to collide and come together. Right. Yeah. And I just felt like that was very important to be able to stream through.
Yeah, that goes into that idea of, or the concept of conscious partnerships. And that is something that, I've been meditating a lot on, and not only male and female as a romantic relationship, but also as a romantic relationship, to just manifest conscious partnerships, because it encompasses everything that you just said, which is honoring the male and the female, the masculine and the feminine energy, and having that unity physically, but also emotionally, spiritually, and in all realms, all areas of your life, and all realms of existence. So I completely identify with everything you just shared.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful what you just said as well, that I want to add on top of, is everyone's in relation with each other, right? We don't need to be in an intimate relationship to have work that needs to be done, right? I believe that me and you are in a relationship through this conversation. Me and you are in a relationship beyond this conversation, right? Because you're listening to me, and I'm honoring you, and you're honoring me, and we're not judging each other, and we're holding each other in the safe space. As I look into your eyes right now, we're able to cultivate and create something beautiful through this conversation, right? But it takes two conscious partners, in this case, us. Doesn't mean we're intimate. Two conscious partners to be able to create something beautiful. And that could be the case in business. That could be the case in a conscious, intimate relationship. That can be the case with a mom and a child. It can be the case with anything, right? And we got to begin. And this is Gene Key's wisdom, right? Richard always talks about this. And if you haven't heard of Gene Keys, please check it out. Richard always talks about to use our relationships, our day-to-day relationships, as a way to healing. And I believe that that's going to be the new form of healing, is being able to use our relationships that we see on a day-to-day basis, because they're here for our healing, to be able to ascend in our own frequency, to be able to ascend and transcend and transmute that karma that we may have between each other, to almost climb up that ladder of consciousness or love into a deeper level of wholeness into our whole entire being. And that's a concept that's very rare. It's rarefied right now to say that you're in a relationship with everyone you see. Most people just see relationships as intimate, and we need to refine and kind of almost like restructure our mind in that way, because we're in relation with everyone we meet. And that changes everything, I believe, when you begin to view the world in that way.
Yeah, 100%. When you start having these conversations and having those conscious relationships, things start shifting all around. I mean, I feel like that's a lot to receive. I'm processing everything that we're talking about, but it definitely feels that way, that, this is a relationship, and it feels like we are healing a lot just through this conversation. Whoever is out there listening now, or is gonna, come into contact with this video at one point in their lives, or when they need to hear this message. And just the fact that we're having this conversation is healing in itself, because it's happening and this energy is vibrating and it's going to other realms of the universe and the planet, and we are healing the masculine and the feminine right now, just by having this conversation where you're holding space for me and I'm feeling heard, and I'm holding space for you, and I hope you're feeling heard, but that's my intention. And just having that intention behind each relationship, and just bringing that into every relationship that you have.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. Yeah. Do you remember that question that you mentioned a few minutes ago?
I feel like we need like a moment. It's like a moment of pause and reflection. So much.
Well, what I can say, and while you ponder, it's just, I'm so deeply grateful for the fact that you're able to open up this dialogue and to be a conscious creator in opening up this vault. We can see it as a vault that hasn't been opened in a while. And I believe that like I mentioned earlier, the healing between men and women, the battle of the sexes, is the best way I'm able to put it. It is the deepest healing that one can be initiated into, and that's a personal journey as well, right? Something else that I'm feeling really called to be able to say as I look at Jesus right here, he's looking at me. It's an inner journey, right? These energies that we talk about. And I think the reason why I'm able to speak on these things so fluidly is because I've been able to do the work inside of my own self. I've never been in a relationship, in an actual relationship, just throwing that out there. So there was no experience that was out there in a relationship that taught me these things. I use my own relationships, my relationships with everyone on a day-to-day basis, to then experience and heal myself from these things that I speak of. And I think the reason why I'm able to fluidly speak about these things in such a delightful manner that's received well is because of the fact that I went inward with it, and that doesn't mean that that's the only path, right? Because a lot of people learn their karmic ties, their karmic healing, their ways of healing through intimate relationships, and that's beautiful, right? However, I believe that there's a new way of healing that's on the precipice that is very much so needed to be understood. And that's turning all of that karma and entering inward with it, right? You could still use everyone, like I mentioned, in your relationships on a day-to-day for karmic healing, right? Because we are in relation, we still live this human life. You don't want to become a monk and fly off and exit the world, because that's not what's needed either. But there is a sense of being able to go inward and reflecting and doing something called self-inquiry. And I believe that my stage of healing and the reason why I was able to accelerate my healing so fast, and not fast in the way of like quick, but I accelerated it because I stopped looking outward and I began to go inward with my own energies and reflect upon why and how. And I think this is kind of going back to your question, like why and what did these specific relationships in my life do to me and cause me to believe the things that I believe about myself right now? Why do I not feel worthy of love? Why do I feel shameful? Why do I feel the need to be competitive with my brothers? Why can I not walk with an open heart? Why did I allow this woman to hurt me in this way? Why did I allow this man into my life to then break my heart? Why didn't I honor myself at that specific time? What was I lacking from my father in this relationship that led me to believe the things that I'm leading to do right now? What am I lacking from my father's relationship that I'm looking for in other men? Right? These are questions that need to be asked internally inside of yourself, and giving yourself the proper space, time, and yeah, the proper space and the gentleness with your own being, which means you have to dedicate specific time to be with yourself. There's so many people that are afraid of spending time with themselves, which is a whole nother subject. That's really when this awakening process begins, is when you shut everything off externally and you begin to look inward. I always tell someone, if you haven't experienced anxiety, or if you haven't experienced like this awakening, shut everything off for a day. No, not even a day. Shut everything off for an hour. Have no access to anything. Close your eyes, and you'll soon come to find the things that you need to work on. Right. Very quickly. You'll experience it quick, And I believe that's what the world is lacking right now, is that the bravery and the courage that it takes to trodden upon this healing journey.
Well, on that, I feel like that's why we had this pause, how we just had this pause in this conversation, but the world is on pause right now. Ironically, so maybe it was like the universe giving us like a moment of pause, because that is what we're experiencing right now. I feel like it was a moment of pause and self-reflection. And that's why it's so hard too, because not everybody wants to stop and look at themselves. And even for those who do, like us, like you and I have stopped to look at ourselves, a lot of the times it's not easy to look at every part of yourself. And that takes a lot of work on yourself, meditation, and just like the willingness to really be vulnerable enough to see where you need to work on yourself, where you need to improve, or just how do you move forward, how do you go to the next level of your existence, or the next realm, or just like elevate yourself, right? Like elevate the conversation, elevate your experience all around. And it takes a lot to elevate yourself in every relationship in your human existence. It's not like a quick fix by any means, but I do see it on myself, that I feel like, wow, I've come such a long way from a year ago or from 5 years ago. But there are still certain points that, I'll be like, oh my God, I thought I was further along. I can't believe, something like this can bring me down. Or sometimes, I have like some really highs, and then I'll be hit by like a low moment of like emotionally, that I would just feel like I don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to have that moment of self-care and, honoring my body, honoring myself. And I know there's like, not everybody talks about that. That's another thing, is like the cycles of the human body, or the woman's body, like being on my period. I can't say your period because that's not part of the male experience, but it's like when I'm on my period. It's like, it's a cycle. It's like a moon cycle. That's something I started reading about and like researching about. And it's not literature that is like available out there. And it's still such a taboo. Even as a teenager, you know, no one talks about period as a sacred ceremony, as a sacred ritual, how it used to be, you know, ages ago. And I've become so much more connected to my period and the phases of the moon. I know you're probably not expecting that. And even like I'm talking about that and I'm thinking, why am I talking about my period right now? But that's so important to put it out there because it's part of the cycle of life and like creation of life. And it is honoring your cycles as in a release. It's a release of your body is detoxing. It's a release of emotion. And it is a time of just allowing yourself to take time for self-care and just honoring your feminine side. And we've attached such negative connotations to that in our society, even when a man is speaking about that, and even when other women, when they're talking about that. And I've recreated and reframed it in my mind that it's such like a sacred, beautiful time. It's the time for the sacred feminine. Um, and I just wish that more women rephrased it and reframed it that way, to just really honor it, and having that time to shut yourself out for self-reflection and connect with your inner wisdom, because that is what it's always been. Like, you know, they used to call it the red tent, which is like when you would just connect with your inner wisdom and other women would circle around it and you would share your wisdom from a space of vulnerability. So that is the meaning, the real meaning of the origin, you know, of what getting your period meant for society as a whole, is that time to connect with your inner self, your inner child, your inner wisdom. And it comes to this feminine energy that we need so much. And I feel like the world is in a state of asking for that feminine energy, that inner wisdom, that inner self, inner child, and just reconnecting with who you really are. I just feel that that's so connected to our body cycles and nature and nurturing and motherhood and mother nature. I really feel like that's all connected with what we're going through right now.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing what you just shared. And as a man, I believe that going through the feminine healing essence that I've been going through in my own way, I'm very connected to womb wisdom and all of that sort, you know, and I believe the reason why I have so much respect and honor and love and compassion, and that I see women with such pure eyes, is because been I've been allowed access into the visualization and the understanding, the understanding of those periods, of those cycles, of the inner knowing of that feeling, right? And think about this, you know, what I was explaining maybe about 20 minutes ago about those ancient stories about when things, you know, subsided, and you kind of you dabbled into it a little bit. This is when women were respected and honored and seen in their highest regard. Men back then in those days used to understand womb wisdom and the cycles of what women went through at that time. And you know, that the red tent that you speak of, men used to be so in tune with women and honored and respected their wisdom so much that they would understand, and they would allow them all to leave into the next town, into the jungle or into the forest, and spend that week or however long just with themselves, to honor themselves and come back with the intuitive wisdom, the love, the truth, or whatever that they gained, because through that precious, delicate process. And as men, they honored their women or their wives at that time to be able to have that space for themselves, you know, to be able to honor the cycles, to be able to release, to be able to purge, to be able to receive. And it was through that, at that time, you know, this was a different age, they would come back with vast amount of wisdom. You know, whether that be, at the time, they say that they would know exactly where to plant the crops, because women would see visualizations of rain falling at that exact point in the town, you know. So, and this is just like myth. These are like myths. They're real, but but you gotta you gotta dig behind the meaning of these stories. Like, what's really being said is women have access to these vast amount of powers, and when they're honored, when they're protected, when they're seen, when they're heard, when you allow themselves to be safe and feel protected as a man, and you give them space, that you're allowed as a woman to begin to access these deeper streams of wisdom, you know, and this beauty that you guys have always had access to. And the sad part that hurts my heart is what you just mentioned, you know, and I hope and pray that I'm able to speak on this, you know, and I humbly ask that it's received well. Is it's sad to see that women have lost that sense of the inner knowing, of the respecting of their own womb, of their own inner wisdom, of their intuition, of the beauty that they have access to. And it's sad for me to see that the things that I see on the internet and the women that I see on a day-to-day basis not honoring themselves in that way. And thank you for sharing what you just shared, because it's women like you that begin to start to honor themselves, that give other women the permission to begin to do the same thing, you know. And that's the divine feminine, that's the queendom, that's the honoring of thyself as a woman that begins to create the balance, you know, because it's not just men that need to do the work, it's also women, you know. That's whole nother subject, but it's both. We there's no blaming, there's no finger pointing, we need to do the work. And it's through what you just mentioned on your end that true beauty and true love and that true divine essence, that true divine feminine essence begins to resurface in the world. And it's very much so needed right now.
Yes, definitely. It is what's needed right now. And I think we are getting better. You know, I want to move into like a positive, positive momentum, but I do feel like all of this is positive. You know, this whole
Yes.
conversation is positive, and what you just shared too about, you know, what we're moving towards. I think the silver lining here of this whole pause that we're living through is that we are going towards more feminine energy. The way I look at it is that we were coming from a masculine energy that was not working,
Mm.
and and that we're moving through feminine energy, and we're allowing more of that feminine energy to come through nurturing, wellness, well-being, intuition, like you said, and just like trusting that inner guidance. That is so important, and that's the only thing that can really lead you to true happiness.
Mm.
um, and I did remember what was my question, if we want to kind of circle back, go full circle. It was about how do we create a fresh start. So now that we're talking about a new year, and we've been on this moment of self-reflection for almost a year. So how do you create a fresh start and let go of those old beliefs and leave all those behind, so you can create a fresh start for yourself, for your relationships, and be it conscious relationships in your life or romantic relationships that you're going to be entering?
Beautiful question. Yeah, I believe the word that came through to me as you were speaking that is forgiveness. You know, forgiveness is freedom. Forgiveness is freedom. When I heard those words, I believe that my life was forever changed. And a lot of people don't understand the depth of forgiveness. Forgiveness is a deep process. It's an inner process. It's an alchemical process that happens within your aura, within your body, within your being. And you know when you've fully forgiven yourself for a specific thing, for a specific emotion, something that you moved through, right? And I believe to get to that fresh start that we speak of, we can't enter into these spaces in an external way or in a basic way, for lack of a better way to say it. It needs to happen internally. You know, I'm not going to lie and say that this process and this process and this process should be done, because it's not true. And I would be leading you down the wrong direction, because true forgiveness and true fresh starts happen within, right? And for anyone listening that receives this well and has this inner calling, and this message resonates, it would be to go within, to go within to these parts of your being that are not really resonating with yourself anymore, and begin to practice forgiveness. And there's this beautiful practice that I used for years and years when I was going through a deep part of my healing journey. And it's the self-inquiry that I just mentioned. and you're going to begin to have to become the mother to your own forgiveness, right? You will have assistance if you believe in higher realms and God and angels and beings and things of that nature that you could call upon, right? But in this most simplistic way, you're going to have to begin to learn how to mother yourself through your own wounding, through your own patterns, because the truth of the matter is, we are the hero that we've been waiting for, or we are the heroine that we've been waiting for. We are who we've been waiting for, us, the God within us. We have access to be able to enter into these spaces of our own bodies, of our own memories, of our own thoughts, of our own patterns and programming, and be able to reprogram these thoughts or these memories and revisit them and apply what I like to call self-forgiveness or self-soothing. So one beautiful practice that I would be able to introduce into the field is being able to do what you're doing right now. Close your eyes, relax, light a candle, do something self-soothing for yourself. Set what I like to call a sacred space for yourself, and being able to do that is just the beginning. And just by setting that sacred space, whether that be a candle or a bath or incense, or like you mentioned, aromatherapy, whatever that does to put you into that safe space, music, nice, soft, soothing music. And if you're familiar with meditation, just begin to meditate, to drop into your own being, and you'll know exactly where to go. You'll know exactly what to do when that time comes. And you begin to apply this self-forgiveness and this self-soothing that we all have access to. And for me, I've experienced the most deepest, profoundest things when I've let myself enter into these spaces. And the memories and the things that I mentioned that do not resonate with you anymore, they will arise, and you will touch those sacred, wounded spaces within your being, and it will be scary. And it will be overwhelming, and it won't be pretty as most people portray the healing journey to do, but it will be the most rewarding. You will feel the most free. You will experience true bliss. You will experience true freedom, true peace, true happiness, true joy at the end of it. Rumi said a beautiful quote that it is through the wound that the light will enter. It is through the wound that the light will enter. And most people are hiding from their wounds, not knowing that it is through that wound that they begin to experience the fulfillment and the happiness and the joy that they've always been yearning for. And that's what's changed my life. And that's what's been able to create a more whole, loving, compassionate being that you see here today. And it's been a long time coming for me to be able to speak in this way, to be able to be the embodiment of what you may be hearing and what you may be seeing and resonating with. And it was through my own courage and willingness to go deep within my entire body, deep within my entire soul, to heal myself of these things, that I began to experience what I've always wanted. And I've been there. I've done that in regards to the external money. I was successful at a job. I was making tons of external wealth. I had everything, the car, I had the money in the bank account. I mean, I had everything that you would want to go after, to think that would fill this void that we all feel, potentially, that most of us feel. And it's not until I began to go within my own heart and heal myself that I began to feel this freshness and this new start that you just spoke of. And that's the true fresh start. That's the true new beginning that we're all asking for. But most people don't want to say it this way because it's not the easiest, and that's something that I would reference for people just to begin to drop into and replay that what I just mentioned a million different times until it resonates and it motivates you to do it, or else it'll get to the point where there's no other choice. And I believe that that's where the world is getting to now. So there's nowhere else to run but inward.
I think we're at that point.
Yeah.
Already. We got to that point. There's nowhere else to run, just inward. You gotta go inside. There's literally and figuratively in every possible way.
Exactly.
Yeah. I have I wanted to share a quote too, that I've been meditating actually just this week. I always wake up and I go to it, and I feel like it has given me some peace of mind. And it is, so the quote is, I am never in control of what happens around me, but I'm always in control of what happens within me.
Mm. Mm. Beautiful.
I'm never in control of what happens around me, but I'm always in control of what happens within me.
Beautiful.
If I think we're coming to an end, I feel like we could be having this conversation for another hour, but
Totally.
trying to keep it for an hour or so each episode. But this has been such a pleasure to talk to you about all of these amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all that you've shared with me here today about the masculine and feminine and our inner power. And if you wanted to maybe just close with you can share your social media handles as well so people can follow, and I'll post it on my end as well, and follow, and I want to hear more of the messages that you have out there, so we can stay on track, and maybe just do like a moment of mindfulness and self-forgiveness, like how we did in the beginning. Just end that way, just close it that way.
Yeah, let's do it. My Instagram handle is my first and last name, which I'm sure will potentially be in like the bio or whatever you plan on doing with the podcast and the YouTube. So it's Justin and my last name Tristao. And yeah, like I mentioned, I'm sure you're going to put the name on whatever the topic is. So yeah, and I would love to drop us into just something short, just by closing our eyes. And once again, just using the breath to relax our bodies, relax our minds, to drop us back into our center by taking a deep breath in through the nose and releasing through the mouth. Deep breath in through the nose and releasing through the mouth. One more deep breath in through the nose and releasing through the mouth. And then just bringing both hands and placing them on your heart space. Allowing yourself to feel your heart beating. To feel the gratitude you have for your life, for your body, for your health, for your family, for this beautiful earth that we call home. Allowing yourself to take a deep breath in into your heart space, feeling your chest and your heart expanding and releasing. Showing love to yourself, showing love for all you've experienced, all that's happened to your life has led you to exactly where you need to be now. Feeling yourself worthy of love, of forgiveness, feeling yourself worthy of peace and harmony within your entire being. You are loved. You are loved. You are always guided. May we return back to our hearts and lead from our hearts now and forevermore. Taking a deep breath in into the nose and releasing through the mouth. Opening your eyes whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being present, for sharing everything you shared, and thank you for guiding us into this beautiful space. So grateful. Thank you. Thank you for all the healing. I feel
Mm-hmm.
it. I feel it in my heart. I feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for everyone that is joining us or will join us in the future, past, present, and future, because I believe everything is happening at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So just beautiful energy. Thank you so much, Justin. And thank you everyone for joining us and being here. And I hope this helps whoever needs this healing right now, wherever you may be. Thank you.